Hello, welcome to Mod Midwives, a Metro Midwifery podcast. I'm Gina Gerboth.
And I'm Nedra Hale, and we are home birth midwives serving the Denver metro area.
How are you doing this week? You've had I don't even know why I'm asking. You've had a terrible week.
Had a terrible week, and I'm adjusting my uncomfortable bones at the moment.
Oh.
So my new car got wrecked.
The new car that we were introduced to only last week.
Yes, the new car referenced in last week's podcast got smashed up by a drunk driver or otherwise impaired driver. I'm not really sure what was happening with him, but
driving under some sort of influence.
Driving under the influence, and he smashed up my new car on about the fourth time I drove it. So I'm super bummed out.
It's horrifying.
Cool. Yeah.
It's horrifying. I cannot believe it. I'm so sorry that happened.
Yeah. So I'm in this surreal place of, did I ever have a car? Was that just like a figment of my imagination?
How many times do you think you drove it before it happened?
Like 4 or 5 times. It did take one lengthy trip up to Bailey, and we had a little hike. So, but it had a grand total of about 200 miles on it.
That is not okay. That's horrible. Oh, that was a crazy day. That was Thursday, which is our combined day, and we were in peer review in the morning. Yeah. And then you were on your way to the office, and that's when it happened. And then I kind of went to get you back home, and then went to the office and tried to scramble and get stuff done for the rest of the day, but it made for a little discombobulation.
Yes.
For sure.
Yeah, and then I forgot to put my trash out on Friday, so the whole weekend's been discombobulated.
And it's a holiday, so that means it's going to be late next week, probably.
Oh,
because Memorial Day is tomorrow.
Tragic. Yeah,
I know. Well, oh well.
Yeah, I mean, it's just stuff.
Yeah, but it's big stuff.
Yes, that's true.
Well, my week was pretty good. You and I did our virtual 5K this morning, which is actually physically moving. You're not just sitting there virtually.
Right. It's not a pretend 5K. We actually, that you ran one and I walked one, and then you like check in and then you still get a medal. And all
did you check in? It just said to send an email.
Yeah, all I did is send an email too, and so I hope that works.
And it said to tag virtual 5K run or something like that, or virtual run. I don't know what it said. Anyway, on Instagram, virtualrun.com, I think, hashtag virtualrun.com.
I have not done that.
I don't think you have to do that. I just think that's what they want you to do. I mean, they're trying to get people to. Yeah. I think it's a new service or company. So it's kind of cool. You get to pick your race, and we did the social distancing 5. Well, it could be a 1, 5, or 10K. So I thought that was cute that we'll get it looks like hand sanitizer on the middle.
It's perfect.
And it has toilet paper on it too. So
yes,
I think it's good to do little timely ones. There isn't a Memorial Day one. I wondered if there would be something like that, but I didn't see it. There's a Father's Day one coming up.
There were some fun ones.
Yeah. Yeah, we missed Cinco de Mayo. They had really cute ones.
That medal looked cool.
I know. I'm sad that we didn't find out about
that
this.
That was the mustache one, right?
Yes, it was so cute. And there was a Mother's Day one. We missed that. So anyway.
I did buy my Mother's Day present for myself, though.
Oh, good. What did you buy?
Tortoise. I bought myself a tortoise.
Oh, that's a lame Mother's Day present.
I am very excited about it.
I know.
Mean, what else am I? It's not like I can go get a pedicure. I mean, I can, I guess now. I don't know what the rules are, but I am still social distancing. So
pedicures are way low on my list.
They're not. I mean, like, I really need one. Really
my
badly.
Hair does not look that bad except it doesn't look good scrunched up right now as much. But but it's actually at a pretty good length. So I'm going to let my hair ride for a little while, I think.
Everybody's hair in my house is really ugly, but it is growing out, and oh my gosh,
get past it. Push past
it. Hayden his hair is really in trouble, but
he and Liam have similar hair, that kind of crazy,
that coarse,
like, curly.
But so I don't know. That might be something we have to address at some point soon, but they're not going anywhere. So it's like, who cares?
I bought something today. True confessions. It's not my Mother's Day present. Well, maybe it is. I bought a Kindle today.
You did? Why?
Because I do not like to read on my iPad, which is giant, and my phone is too small. And I don't really like the iPad. I've been sitting outside a lot in the sun, and you can't really read on the iPad out in the sun or on your phone out in the sun. So I decided to buy a Kindle. I know, I feel like I've gone back 10 years, but
yeah. How interesting.
But they are really nice for sitting outside. And I really want to read.
It does that thing.
Yeah, it doesn't, there's no glare.
Yeah.
And they're waterproof now. So you can sit in a pool, not that there's any pools open. Oh my gosh, I would just kill to go float around in a pool right now.
Really?
Yes, I miss it so much.
I don't know. I would just like to do, I guess now that we're kind of open to hiking, that is going to make me happier.
Yeah, I went hiking yesterday.
It's still a little tough. There's a lot of people out, and so we're still like covering our faces and stuff. So you end up hiking, going like this, cover, uncover, cover, uncover. So
I did take a mask when I went hiking yesterday, and it was challenging to get it on and off, and I can't stand it around my neck. So I bought some, what are they called? Balaclavas?
Yeah, balaclavas. I don't know if that's the correct pronunciation.
I don't either, but I bought some. I think that might be something I can use when I'm hiking, but I cannot stand the mask on and off and on.
Yeah.
And off.
No, I couldn't either. So I just like tie a bandana around my neck, which is annoying, but it's easy to just
the mask just isn't. It's not, because I think we wear a more fitted mask. It's hard. I think it's just hard to take it on and off all the time.
Definitely.
So. Not like I was out hiking with an N95, but it's still
no. No, but the ones, even the fabric ones we wear, have like the filter layer, and
it's tight.
It's too thick. Like I definitely get winded really fast, and so even if I have to hike for a few minutes with the bandana on, I can still breathe. So
I guess what I did while I was hiking yesterday, twisted my ankle. It is my thing. It's why I don't really like to hike. I like to hike, except that I don't like getting hurt.
That's a bummer.
It only hurts for a minute. Like, it wasn't a bad sprain or anything like that, but it just twists enough that it sends that sharp pain, and then you're super nervous for the rest of the time.
Have you ever done ankle exercises, like ankle strengthening exercises?
I mean, I used to be a dancer, so I know that if I did lots of releves and stuff, it would help.
Yeah, but I used to, like, when I remember, I used to, like, this was for my shins, but also for my ankles, is I would just like squat against the wall and like lift up my toes.
Okay.
To get my ankles stronger.
I don't feel like I have weak ankles. I just think I keep hitting rocks.
Oh,
but maybe I do. I don't know.
I mean, I don't know.
I don't know either. It's so sad. It was really disturbing.
Oh,
well, we do have a topic today.
Woo! What is it?
8 minutes in. Our topic is Ask the Midwives Part 4. So we're going to go over some of the questions that we have. And I think I'm going to send out another Instagram plea for questions. So everybody should look in the Instagram story for that, I think is where I'll put it. So we have covered this question way at the beginning, but since we're well past a half a year of Mod Midwives, it's probably good to circle back around.
Okay.
What are some of the differences? What are some of the specific differences between a CPM and a CNM, especially specific to Colorado? I feel like a lot of families don't know how much a CPM is actually able to do, is the question from a dear reader. So what's usually your response to that one?
Well, I mean, the one that affects the way that we practice the most, I think, is the prescriptive authority.
Yeah. That's probably the biggest difference in terms of scope of practice.
Yes.
Except that we don't provide well person care for the whole year, or we only provide care during the childbearing period.
Yeah.
So we don't do well person care outside of the, first visit to 6-week postpartum is all that we do. But so I think if you want more information about the educational background, it's worthwhile to go to that early Mod Midwives episode, which is called, I think so, You Want to Be a Midwife? Is that the one
that sounds right.
I believe it's episode 3. I could be wrong. It's in the first 5 for sure. So that talks more about the educational pathway. But in terms of scope, We CPMs do have a somewhat limited scope. I also want to mention that there's a lot of misuse of CPM in context of Colorado, because not all direct entry home birth midwives are CPMs in Colorado.
Right.
CPM is a national credential that is now required for state licensure, but it didn't used to be. So some direct entry midwives aren't CPMs, but it gets used interchangeably, which is, what's that called? A word that's not quite used right. I'm sure there's a aphorism, or I don't know what, something, aphorism, something like that. Anyway, it's a word that's not quite used right, but practically most of us are CPMs, and you and I both are.
Yep.
So we can do all of the things that a CNM can do in terms of things like the anti-hemorrhagic medications, IVs. We just can't do anything that would require prescribing a drug. At this point, that includes antibiotic prophylaxis in labor. We can't do that.
Right.
So that's probably the biggest thing. Also, probably even more frequently, it'd be nice to be able to prescribe an antibiotic for UTI or something like that.
Right.
We can't do that. So we have to refer out for that. On the flip side, a big difference is malpractice insurance.
Yes.
I don't know if you want to tackle that.
Yeah, I mean, so CPMs, or I guess registered midwives, I should say, are not required to carry malpractice insurance in Colorado, or I don't know if they are anywhere.
A few places, yeah. Mostly places where they have Medicaid reimbursement.
Yeah. And the main reason here, at least, is that it's not like it's a total cost barrier. You know, the cost of it would push us out of practice, and so we are exempted from it. Is that right? Am I understanding that right?
Yeah, our state law says something like we'll be required to carry malpractice insurance when it becomes affordable.
Right.
That's an oxymoron. I know what that word is.
Right.
Affordable malpractice insurance is not a thing. And it's one of those things that the more experienced you are and the more births, the higher volume you have, the more your premium is. So it goes up with experience and skill.
Interesting.
Well, it's interesting because I think you can see as we move into having a higher volume practice now, you can see that we see more unusual situations. And so I just think it's one of those things that we're more likely to have stuff like that come up when we have more people in care. Some states, Washington, I believe, is an example, have malpractice requirements, but the state underwrites it. So it's offset by state funds. And so sometimes they have requirements for it, but they're not actually responsible for paying the whole premium out of pocket. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I don't completely know the nuances of it, but several states have malpractice requirements, but not most. I mean, less than a dozen, I'm sure. Probably less than 5, honestly. So that's maybe a difference. That means that there are very, very few nurse midwives in Colorado who do home births, because malpractice rates are pretty high for home birth. And so it effectively puts them out of practice in the home birth context.
Right.
So, true. I mean, I think as of today, I feel like there's 3 or so nurse midwives practicing in the home birth setting.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
And other things like birth centers, they have the facility covers the malpractice insurance. So again, the provider isn't expected to.
Yeah, it's a large chunk to be responsible for. And I mean, our practices have to be small. It's even in a partnership, they still have to be relatively small in order to be manageable. So it's just you don't make enough money to pay those kind of premiums.
Exactly. I had another thought on that. It's out of my head. It'll come back.
Away.
Something else about a difference between nurse midwives and direct entry midwives, or actually in this case, we could really say the CPM credential, is that most of our clinical experience needs to be in an out of hospital context, out of hospital setting.
Yes.
Nurse midwives actually don't have a requirement for that. And therefore they can go all the way through nurse midwifery school, never having attended a home birth, and then set up a home birth practice.
Mm-hmm.
I think, there's more to your preparation than just your didactic work or even your clinical experience in a controlled hospital type environment.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot.
It's totally different when it's just you.
Yep.
Or just you and your assistant, like it's a whole different feeling.
Yeah. It's definitely a preparation difference.
Yep.
So that's really all I can kind of think of.
Yeah.
We can do all the other things. We can do all the newborn screens. We can do vitamin K and eye ointment. Maybe one thing we don't do, vaccinations. That's not in our scope. Other than that, we can offer the baby everything. Yeah. I think that's basically what we can do.
Yes, that sounds good.
Okay. I'm looking for the next question. What is your advice for those? By the way, I have not prepared you with these questions, so.
Which I always love because you know how quick my brain works.
I know, sorry. I think it's fun to spring questions on you. Anyway, what is your advice for those who are planning a home birth, but baby is breech and are now looking at a C-section possibility in the current situation? So you've come to care early on, you've been getting care, and now you find out the baby's breech. What options are out there?
So it kind of depends on when we find this out.
Let's say that we find this out let's start with 34 weeks.
Okay. So still kind of late, but not super late. At 34 weeks, we still have a little bit of time to try things like chiropractic and acupuncture and spinning babies. And I mean, there's a lot of tricks.
Inversions and peas.
Yes, exactly. Swimming pool, handstands. So there's a whole bunch of things we try, moxibustion perhaps, to try to get the baby to turn. But at 34 weeks, we might even still start to talk about getting a consult for an external version from a physician, and that's where they would try to turn the baby. So of course, that works the best the smaller the baby is and before the baby is engaged in the pelvis and all that stuff. So 34 is a little bit early for that, but it's not too early to start thinking about it at least. And then hopefully that's successful. If it's not successful, the next step is to see if we can find a physician that we can consult with about a vaginal breech birth. Sometimes that's possible. Sometimes it's not appropriate. Sometimes it's hard to find someone who will talk about it. It just depends on the situation. And then I suppose we would talk about how to get the best kind of situation for a cesarean.
Right. There's definitely more kind of natural cesarean practices where you can have skin to skin, delayed cord clamping, sometimes a clear drape.
Right.
Lots of things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you want more information about this, we did have a breech topic that a breech podcast, one specifically on breech. I'll link to that when I put the blog post up, but it was in the middle-ish. You can always go to www.modmidwives.com and that's where they're all just like one at a time kind of listed out. That's the easiest way to find them. Okay, good. Yeah, I think it does depend. Oh yeah, this is pretty regionally. There's a lot of regional variation here. So here in Colorado, we might be able to find some providers that would consider a vaginal breech, depending on your circumstance. Even that is a little sketchy, and that's not going to be true everywhere for sure.
Oh, definitely not.
So, yeah. And when I say Colorado, I mean Denver. It's really different.
And to be clear, we are not permitted to do breeches under our license registration. Registration.
Here is a fun one for you. Okay. What is the heaviest baby you've ever caught?
I think it was 10-4. So it's not that impressive.
Good Betty.
Yes.
That used to be funny in the 70s. It's not that funny anymore. Or
Probably
the
nobody
80s.
knows what it means.
10-4, Good Betty. Is it from
But
Smokey and the
I'm
Bandit?
just gonna be honest, that is totally fine with me. I'm not looking to do any 11
To break
pounder.
any records.
Yes.
I think mine is 10-5. So I've had a 10-4 and a 10-5,
yes.
so very close. I agree with that. I don't really want to be surprised by an 11 or 12 pound baby.
Mm-hmm.
And while sometimes that might be the size of baby that your body grows, fairly often it's a sign that we've got something going on, like undiagnosed gestational diabetes.
Right.
So,
and sometimes those babies have a little trouble coming out. So
yep, for sure. All right. That was a fast one.
Okay.
What's something you wish everyone knew about nursing before trying it for the first time?
Well, I always objected to the notion that if you're doing it right, it is not painful at all. And I think that you should not be having severe pain, but I think expecting it to not feel like anything for the first few days is unrealistic. And
I agree. As an IBCLC, I agree with that. I think that some of the tenderness that happens early on in those first few days is hormone related, not latch related. Because, and I'll tell you why I think this, I have had 2 children that tandem nursed. So I was nursing my preschooler and my infant at the same time. Mm-hmm. And when the baby was born, my nipples were still tender early on. And
really?
So even though the older one was still nursing, so it wasn't a use issue.
Right. I thought it was all use.
Nope. It's also hormones. I'm pretty sure.
Interesting.
So I always tell people that you should, if you experience tenderness early on in the feed, it should go away pretty quickly, like 10 to 12 to 15 seconds. Mm-hmm. You should see it improve quickly within the feed, early in the feed. If it's persistently uncomfortable or pinchy or ouchy or stabby, then break the latch and try again. But it could just be hormones.
Right. And then, of course, if you're getting blisters or cracks and stuff like that.
Absolutely. That's definitely a sign that there's something going on with the latch. Most sore nipples are because there's something going on with the latch. But just know that it can be normal to have that little, where you take your breath in just a minute and then it gets better. Yeah. This isn't really something that I wish people knew, but it's something that surprised me early on, was that you have multiple nipple pores on each side. I was expecting a bottle nipple, 1 or 2 or 3 streams of milk coming out.
Yeah.
It was a shower head.
Right. It's a shower
and head. I was surprised by that. It was like, whoa, that was not what I thought was going on in there. So,
yes.
And also I was surprised that when you are nursing on one side, the other side lets down. It's so not regulated. Like, it's just a mess. It's just a big wet mess everywhere.
Yes. You've got to be prepared for it to happen anywhere, everywhere, all the time.
Every little crying baby.
Yes.
I think it's a good thing to go into it with your eyes open about how much commitment and time it's going to take. It is basically what you're going to do for the first several weeks is nurse and sleep and eat and pee and shower and nurse and sleep and eat and pee and shower. Like, this is a full-time job for a significant amount of time, at least a few weeks, a few months. And even the first year is a pretty significant time commitment. But like everything, just because it takes time, it doesn't mean it's, wasted time. It's just time well spent, but it does take, it is not something you can just pop them on, expect to nurse once every 4 hours and fit in all your regular life in the middle of it.
Right. And just because it is natural in the way that we're intended to feed our babies and all this stuff does not mean that it's always easy when you start off. It does, it doesn't mean that it doesn't require effort to learn. There is a learning curve for a lot of people. And so I just always like people to know that, that there's sometimes we have to get over a little hump and then it works great, so.
And this, Have I already talked about the learning curve? I feel like I have,
I
but
don't know.
I'll just say it again. If
Okay.
you think about, since especially because we're on Zoom today.
Yeah, you can use your hands.
Yes, exactly. If you think about the graph, you've got a graph, and if you are bottle feeding, it's the same effort for an entire year. If you're breastfeeding, it starts off way higher. It's a lot of effort early on, and then it greatly decreases. We all know about exponential curves now. We have a negative exponential curve, and then it's much less effort for the rest of the first year. So it's a lot more at first, and then it's hugely
and
down
then it's
slope,
so easy.
and then it's so much easier. Yeah,
that makes sense. I don't think you've said that before.
The work of the learning curve.
So awesome. Perfect.
Yeah. So it's an investment. You're making an investment in the amount of effort that you have to put in for the first year. Yeah, I think that's mostly what I wish that people knew about it. And let me just end on a positive note. It's so worth it. It's so worth it.
Oh yeah, of course.
I mean, it's some of my best memories, and there's very few things that I can say without a doubt I did the best thing for my child. Like really few things. I second guess every decision I've ever made, and I have never second guessed that decision. So
yes,
there's a lot of fulfillment that comes with that too. And it changed my life. Okay. I'm going to do one more.
Okay.
I'm trying to find one that's not too negative to end on. Okay. What is the first step in becoming a midwife, and is it doable for everyone? I would absolutely love to do it. I'm on baby number 2, and I'm just obsessed with learning things about pregnancy, birth, and all.
The first step I would say is do a lot of research. So the first step should not be that you email your local midwife and ask what the first step is to become a midwife. Not that it is inappropriate to have sent that as a question. I want to be clear. But we do get those emails a lot.
And to be clear, this person did not email us asking us what the
that would be
was.
terrible if I was ruining our podcast
that.
right now by saying that, and then we'd have to start over because you'd be like, you can't say that. Yeah, so but we do get those emails that are basically requesting for us to walk them through the process of becoming a midwife. So you can easily find out that information on your own, and you should find out all the different paths and have your plan in place before you contact your local midwife.
And the question, is it doable for everyone? The answer is no. It's not doable for everyone.
Way.
No. There are many people working hard to make it more accessible for everyone in terms of scholarship funds, funding for other things that come up during your apprenticeship, things like that. But the lifestyle is not for everyone. It's that simple. It is not something that works for a lot of people. It's just so demanding, even in a sustainable practice model like we are trying to do.
Right.
It's still very demanding and time consuming and labor intensive and energy intensive. And it's not for everyone. Yes. Which is why I suggest that one of the first things to do is to become a doula first, because that's going to give you the best idea of whether the on-call lifestyle is for you.
It's so great for that.
Yeah. But there's a couple differences. So being a doula is really good for learning how to live on call, but it's not the same as being a student midwife in that you have control of your schedule a little more than a student midwife does. A student midwife has no control of their schedule whatsoever. And that's rough. That's really rough. And then the other thing is, being a doula is a little bit, on one hand, it can be harder because you're in a hospital setting and you probably have certain beliefs around birth that are going to conflict with the way that things happen in the hospital. And that's hard, like on an emotional level, but it's actually so much easier because there's no responsibility is falling on your shoulders.
Right.
So, I mean, there's some responsibility to be professional and all of that.
There's professional responsibilities, but you're not responsible for medical decisions, and that is a big deal.
You're not the primary provider. So it gives you an idea. It's not the whole picture. And I know many people, sorry, I tried to fix my light. So now I say there's a huge shadow back there. I know many people who made it all the way through midwifery school, got their license, and practiced less than a year because it was just not a lifestyle that was sustainable for them.
Yeah.
So you can make it to any point in your professional, you can make it to any number of like mileposts and still figure out this isn't going to work for you.
Right.
It's not very family friendly either. For your own family.
So, raising small children as a midwife is tough. And yeah, I think what happens for some people is that even though you're practicing as a primary under supervision, and maybe you even spend some time working with your preceptor after you're licensed and that kind of thing, when you get out there on your own, whenever that happens, I think it's like such a shock to find out what it's like.
It really is.
But if you thought you knew. So
yeah. But I think dipping your toe in as a doula is the best way to get started. And then looking into all of the, I would do the doula thing first. And then I would say, start looking at all the pathways of education and then think about getting started with a school. Because there's no point in starting anything if the on-call lifestyle isn't going to work. So
yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. Again, we have a whole podcast about the on-call lifestyle. Right. We've now done enough breaches. We're covered in a whole podcast and becoming a student or becoming a midwife. So I think that's just about our time for today. We spent a lot of time just recapping the crazy week, but I think that covered a few. So I will be sending out more, or I'll be soliciting more questions to come in. We really like doing Ask the Midwives because it's a good, like we can just sit down and do it. We don't have to do a lot of research, which is great. So we love the questions. Keep them coming.
Please.
And yeah, I don't know what's on tap for next week, but we hope that you'll join us then too. And we'll bring you something good.
All right.
All right. Thanks. Follow us at Metro Midwifery on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, or www.modmidwives.com. Have a great week.
Bye.
Bye.